Hi everyone, Justin Johnson with LT Wright Knives. Out here in the great outdoors, your knife is more than just a tool. It is your absolute lifeline. Today we're diving into a couple different ways that a good, reliable knife can help you build a fire while maybe even saving your life. Now, from the beginning, I can't stress enough the importance of choosing a knife that's built to work, right? Not one that just looks good. And that's usually how we judge a knife, is by its appearance. And so today I'm going to share with you some easy and practical ways to make a fire using a workhorse of a knife like this LT Wright Les Stroud field knife. Now, a well-established fire is going to be able to provide you with many things. First and foremost, when I think of a fire, I think of something that's warm, right? And so in the cold, it's going to help keep hypothermia at bay. Another thing a fire is great for is going to be protection, right? Especially out here in the wilderness. It's going to keep a lot of animals away that might normally creep up into your camp to check things out. Another way is to be able to boil your water, right? We need to be able to boil water to make it drinkable. Also, it's great for cooking food. And so those are just a few ways amongst many others that a fire is good for. So let's think about how a fire is formed, right? We need three key things. One of those three is heat. And the temperature at which a fire starts is dependent upon many things, one of those being the material that you use. In general, and again, it's different upon the material, but in general, it's going to be somewhere around 1,000 degrees Fahrenheit. Now, the second thing is going to be fuel. This can be something as simple as gasoline, propane, kerosene, and even wood. Most propane bottles you can find at a store. These are fairly inexpensive and these work great, especially when you need to get a fire started pretty quickly. Sometimes you may need to bring along some camp fuel, like some white gas. A lot of times I find myself needing to cook on an alcohol stove, and so in that case, I'll use something like denatured alcohol. Now, these little fire starters are excellent, especially if you're going camping and they're calling for a little bit of rain. This is going to help you out, especially if it's hard to find dry wood. And my favorite fuel source is going to be wood. A couple reasons. It's everywhere. Sometimes it has a great smell to it, like cedar. But it's very easy to get this going, especially when it's dry. And the ignition point for this is somewhere around 600 to 700 degrees Fahrenheit. If you go a little bit under that on the temperature, a lot of times that's how you can create char, and you'll see that it'll start to smolder and smoke and whatnot. Now, the third thing we'll need is oxygen. Now, keep in mind, things like humidity are going to play a huge factor with a fire. In North Carolina today, it's roughly about 100 degrees out here, fairly hot, and the humidity is extremely high. You kind of know this because everything feels heavy. It feels a little bit harder to breathe out, okay? That's one way you can know that the humidity level is high. Not only that, if you check your skin, a lot of time it's just going to be saturated, okay? Same thing with wood and, your fuel. It's going to get a little bit wet depending on the humidity level. Now, I've touched briefly on the different types of fuel, but the main one that we're going to use today is going to be wood. Now, when we think about using firewood as our fuel, we need to break this down a little bit further into three different categories. The first one is going to be tinder. Tinder is what you're going to use to get that fire started, all right? That's going to be super fine shavings, all different types of things. Think pocket lint, dryer lint, those types of things. Those are what you're going to need for your tinder, all right? The next kind is going to be kindling. Kindling, think of it in terms of something like a pencil size, all right? So you're out looking for sticks that are about the size of your pinky, somewhere along those lines. I try to gather up enough to fill up, say, a haversack or even something like a hat. And the third kind of wood is going to be your fuel. These are the larger size pieces of wood. Think about the size of your forearm or even bigger, all right? And we're not going to use those until the fire is completely established. Those will come in very last. The most important thing, though, about firewood is that it needs to be dry, okay? So we need to find a dry source first. Usually that's going to be deadfall that's up in the trees. A lot of times when you're out here in the forest, instead of looking down on the ground, just kind of peek up at some of the trees around you. And a lot of times limbs from up above have fallen down and gotten caught in some of the lower lying branches, and you can just literally reach up and grab those, and you'll notice those are going to have a crunch to them compared to the ones that are on the ground, which is where all the moisture is, okay? So make sure your firewood is dry. My favorite type of firewood is fatwood. Here in North Carolina, we have a ton of pine trees. I mean, I can look out and see pine trees everywhere. They're great because the fatwood contains a lot of pine resin, and that is highly flammable. It also smells good, or at least I think it smells good. There's no shortage to tools we have access to start a fire, right? So the most common thing that we can think of is probably going to be a lighter. Most people carry a lighter in their pocket, right? Something else that we could use out here are going to be things like a magnifying glass. We could use a bow drill or even a pump drill. One of the more common ones and one that is widely used is a ferro rod. And that's what we're going to use today. Now, when processing firewood, this has been on the ground for quite some time. It has already been cut and it's been outside close to the ground for quite a few months. And so this is not going to be a great choice for a good fire starter. It's going to have a lot of moisture, and you can tell by just taking off a little bit of the bark there that everything underneath still looks kind of wet. And I can actually touch that and feel that there's moisture in that. All right. So what we need to do is be able to strip that down even further and really get in there and get to the core of this piece of wood. From here, we're going to start to create what's called a feather stick. And to do that, we're basically just going to hold our knife and press down slowly. And we'll start to see those curls begin to form. Now, at some point, once these get fairly thick, I like to go ahead and just take them off all the way and just save this for part of my fire starter. Okay. Again, all these little pieces, if they're not wet and damp, which you will want to discard if so, you're going to use those as your fire starter. Take off a little bit more bark here. You can see how wet this is. It's actually starting to decay underneath the bark here. You want to strip all of this away, get all of that off of there. It's not going to help you get your fire started. Again, just checking, making sure there's no moisture. Doesn't feel too bad right here. We'll just start there. These flat grinds work great for this. Super simple to get in there and create these super thin feathers. All right, take that off. Save that. So if you don't have a tinder bundle and you want to get down in here where all the dry goods are, we can do that by using this 90-degree spine on the back of this knife. It's fairly sharp. It's not going to really cut you, but it's sharp enough that it's going to get the job done. And so basically what we're going to do is look for these ridges on here. And we'll use that 90-degree to kind of scrape down. Okay. And just push that blade down. We'll rotate that piece of wood back and forth. And you're going to notice you're getting these tiny little fluffs of wood. It's almost like sawdust. Okay. That's what we're looking for, quite a bit of this. All right. Another thing you can do is just bring your knife into your stump. And this way you're just using one hand to basically hold the wood. This is facing down into the stump, which makes it extremely safe. And you're just going to scrape your piece of wood over the top. And as you can see, we got our super fine shavings there. We'll set those off to the side. And we're just going to keep working that on across that blade. If it starts to look like it wants to come out, just push it back in there a little bit. There we go. All right. So we're getting all these powder-like shavings now. We want to save those. That's just another way you can do it, driving your knife down into the stump. Again, using that 90-degree edge to really get in there and fluff up some of this. Okay. All right, we'll set that off to the side. All right, so we've got a great tinder source, tinder bundle started. Now we're going to look at making some kindling. And to do that, we're going to baton through that same piece of wood that we've been using. All right, now we're going to baton these in half. I'm going to take these down a little bit further. I don't know if it's hot where you guys are at today, but it is 100 degrees this week in North Carolina, pretty much every day. It has been miserable, absolute misery out here. But I enjoy the outdoors. So here I am. We don't let a little bit of weather get to us out here. Now this would err kind of on the larger size of kindling, so we do need to get sticks and twigs. This is what I meant by finger size here. So tiny little pieces of sticks and stuff out of trees. You can hear how crunchy those are. They just snap. That's what you want. You know they're dry. Just break them up. That way it opens up some of the fibers here on the ends. Those will catch easier than trying to go through this bark. So pop them open. Also, this could be batoned down as well. This is going to be a little bit harder wood here. You're definitely going to want some type of a full tang knife for this. I would not try this with a folder. It'll collapse on you probably. But you definitely want some type of a full tang knife to be able to get through here. All right. Probably would be better to use a hatchet or an axe for that, absolutely. But if you don't have one, again, this will work perfect, right? All right. All right, so I'm just gonna kind of prioritize everything here from biggest to smallest. Couple different tools here. This is a tool roll from Lockbee. They make personal journals and stuff like that. Everybody asks, which is why I'm telling you. Everybody asks in the comments, where did I get this? This is not how I usually store my fire kits. I put all of them in here because I spend a lot of time outdoors, especially creating videos like this, and so I try to keep everything organized. I would not want to put all my, eggs in one basket when I go out. So this is all fire steels and whatnot, and again, just break this up, maybe have one or two in here. Anyways, so we've got a lot of things. We've got a lighter in here. Could easily get this going with the use of a lighter. All right, that would get that going pretty quick. Not a problem. Got plenty of matches in here. These are in a waterproof container. These are going to be weatherproof matches. A couple different fire steels in here. Some of them are wrapped in duct tape. So we've got all these different forms of making fire here. However, I would encourage you to always carry one on you instead of, again, keeping everything inside of a case like this. And so on my leather sheath that comes with my knife, I've got a little holster here that is already sewn into this that allows me to carry a ferro rod with me. All right. A couple different ways to use a ferro rod with a 90-degree spine here on this knife. One, you can just scrape it right off the top. Okay, just like that. You can hold the knife stationary and pull the ferro rod. So instead of me moving the knife, I'm moving the ferro rod. Okay, just like that. A way that I like to use is I like to press my knife into the wood, and you don't have to necessarily drive it in with a mallet. You can just hold it in pretty tight and pull down and pull across with your ferro rod. Okay, this is probably one of the safer ways of doing this. All right, and you'll notice after a few moments you're going to get a little bit of a fire going there. All right, once we've got a, not yet, so we need to get a little bit more going here. And once we got that there, we can try to get these feather sticks going. All right. A lot of times if they go out like this, they're probably too wet. I happen to have a piece of cedar nearby, and so all I'm going to do is just scrape some of this bark off here. And don't worry if you don't get a fire the first time. That happens to a lot of people. You just got to have a better tinder bundle to start off. As you can see, I don't have a whole lot going on here, just for demonstrations purposes. And I want to show you here that sometimes they're going to go out. All right, so we need to make sure we have more than enough tinder, kindling, and everything to get going. All right, we'll try it again. We may need more, but we'll give this a shot. Okay, get that in there pretty quick. A fire likes to travel upward, so you want to help that out as much as possible. These real tiny pieces. Start to add these in here. I'm going to keep working here. This time I've got a little bit of fat wood. This is going to have some pine resin on it. This is a lot drier. Okay, so we'll get some of this in here. And let's get a couple slivers. You can see how much resin's in that. It's quite a bit. Okay. Again, you can find these in pine trees, usually around where the branches connect to the tree in the knot. All right. So let's try this again here. All right. And you can see how flammable that natural resource is. Straight out of a pine tree. It's going to have a black, the characteristic of the smoke is going to have a lot of black in it. Begin to build that up. Again, a fire likes to move upward, so that's how wet that wood is. It was bending, flexing. All right. Again, having a good full tang knife, A2 steel, excellent and easy to sharp out here in the field, no problem whatsoever. 90-degree spine on this, super important to have. Nice burlap micarta handles. They get wet from all this sweat, and it's just going to lock up, right? Your hand's going to lock right in there with that micarta. So generous size hand grip there. I've got large size hands, and you can see I've got a little bit of room here even on the bottom. We've got a place down here for a lanyard. All around just a great outdoor bush knife. Now, something to consider if you were outside and this was on a ground, not on a stump like this, is make sure you have a clearance around this so that it doesn't catch on fire with everything else in the forest, especially other leaves. If it's super dry out, especially in the fall season and the winter season, it's very simple to get a fire started, right? So be careful with, cutting out a place on the forest floor, getting away, sweeping away any type of debris. A lot of times you can use a shovel. You can use another piece of wood for this and just use it as a scraper and just scrape all the material away on the ground to give you a good platform and base to start on. Something else that's important to remember, whenever you get done using your knife, you're going to want to wipe this down and take good care of it because it's going to take good care of you. Now remember, out here, the gear is only as good as the person that is behind it, okay? Don't forget that. Use what's up here first. Your knife is more than just a piece of steel. It's your connection to the great outdoors. You need to learn it, you need to respect it, and you need to trust it. Now don't forget to check out the Les Stroud Field Knife over at ltwrightKnives.com. Also, don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button to subscribe for more outdoor survival tips and tricks. I'm Justin Johnson with LT Wright Knives. I'll see you next time.